Welcome to Fireside Chat on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network by Run Try Bike. We have Evan Birch with us today. Evan is no stranger to our community as we have shared his story in our magazine and on our website multiple times. Evan is also my co-host on the Enduring Minds podcast, and you can head to the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network on your favorite platform and listen to episode 1, where we get to know Evan a bit more. Evan is coming off of his attempt at the Orcas 100 race with his dog Nova. We're going to talk about that and what happened out there, so stay tuned to find out. We will also chat with him about the upcoming Tahoe 200 event and his training, but more importantly, the mental aspect of going from Orcas 100 to Tahoe 200 and beyond at this point. So what's it like to tackle such big events? Stay tuned and find out. Before we bring him onto the show, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network on your favorite podcast platform. We have 9 shows for you to choose from, which means that there's something for you out there. And I'm sure you will be able to enjoy all of them. So, Everyday Athlete Podcast Network on your favorite podcast platform. So let's bring Evan from the back room forward and let's talk to him about his latest adventures and what he's got going on between today and the rest of the year. Evan, how are you, buddy? Good to see you again.
Yeah, I feel like we're talking more frequently for some reason, but I think that's how we designed it, right?
I like it. One of the things, we had a meeting earlier today just talking about the Enduring Minds podcast, and I said how being able to chat with you more often will give us this ability to really connect on a deeper level. And I know that's what the Enduring Minds podcast is about, but I appreciate it in general outside of that podcast platform. Before we get into talking to you about Orcas and Tahoe 200, I know that you know what the icebreaker question is, so we're not going to ask you about pineapple on pizza. Instead, I'm going to put a Canadian twist on it. Nanaimo bar or a maple glazed donut? Which one are you taking?
Well, I'm allergic to nuts, so Nanaimo bars have nuts in them. So on the case of me not wanting to swell up like a balloon and be a party favor, I'm going to take the maple glazed donuts, even though I probably would take chocolate, but I would have to scrape all the inside out and it wouldn't work for me.
That is a hell of a description. You don't want to float off like a Macy's Day balloon.
Can confirm.
Let's keep that away. You've got big plans for the rest of this year. So before we get into the big plans for the rest of this year, I want to start off with the Orcas 100. And you had this vision of running this course with your dog Nova. But before we get into race day and the things that transpired, tell me why. Like, why was this something that you wanted to do with your dog? And honestly, I have not heard of anybody else doing this. So how did the idea even pop into your head?
You know, it's funny. I don't think I could pinpoint the exact date or time when I decided. I've ran multiple ultra distance training runs with her over the last 6 years. Kind of as soon as she turned a year old, we turned it on and we just started going further and further. And she's pretty much my main training partner. She's averaging the same kilometers I'm doing, unless the weather's pour out. If it's too cold or too hot, we can't get water for her. But it was really, the desire was to do something really cool with her. And really, I kind of pick one thing every year. Last year was Speed Project. And I was like, you know what? I want to pick something different and off the cuff and something that nobody else has ever done each year, or choose something that would put me out of my comfort zone. And it really came about from that. I can just see how much she absolutely loves running. It's her job. She's a 7-year-old Hungarian Vizsla. So she's a bird hunting breed, primarily is what she was bred for. So for her, this is like her job. This is her work. So when we put on the leash or the collar or the harness, she just is ready to go all the time. So I just knew that there was something there. Now putting it into a competitive race and, standing at the start line with a dog beside you while everybody else is standing there by themselves is a little weird, I will say.
Yeah. What was that like? What were the other competitors think? Or you can't tell what they were thinking, but did they ask you questions?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody knew from the pre-race meeting the day before, because they introduced it and were very interested in obviously what I was doing. And everybody in the start sheet was just, it brought such levity to the start line when people are nervous and anxious. And here's this dog sitting at the start line. This dog has no idea how far it's like getting ready to go. She just knows I have my harness on, I have my jacket on, he's attached to me. Like we're going somewhere. I don't know for how long and I don't know where it is, but I'm there and I'm like in it. And that's such a beautiful place to start a race from. And I just think as me as a person, like if I could have that level of like mindset at the start of every race to just go like, I'm here, doesn't matter how far I'm going, like I'm here, let's do this. Like it would be such a different mentality. Like she's just, yeah, she had no idea. And everybody was just, you could just see the smiles on people's faces as they look down at her and she's looking up at me like, I get to go this time. Which was, yeah, it was a pretty exciting time to be able to like take her like over that start line and like know that she's with me for the whole time.
As anybody who knows me will tell you that if I was at the start line with you and you had Nova, like I would have wasted all my energy because I'd be like playing with her. And by the time like trying to get to that first aid station, I'd be a total mess. Like I need all the food and fuel because I wasted it all up before the gun even went off. So you mentioned Speed Project and you put out a couple of posts recently because obviously Speed Project started this past Monday, I think,
Mhm.
the 24th. I didn't see Nova in there. So was she at the race event with you as you were doing the Speed Project? Was she in the car traveling?
No, last year she wasn't with us at all. We left her at home with family friends, and it was just us solo. It was way too. I mean, the logistics for Speed Project alone,
Yeah.
and then you throw a dog into it, or you throw something else into it. It's already chaos as it is trying to plan your own route. Like I always say, it's like one of those choose your own adventure books as a kid, where you everybody got to choose where they. And she's barking in the background.
She hears her
Um,
name.
yeah, I'll bring her out after everybody can see her, just so everybody can kind of get a sense of what she actually looks like. Because when everybody thinks about like what you look like as a person, that your dog probably looks like you. I'll let everybody else be the judge of that. But
All right. So now wait, walk us through the event. Gun goes off, you start moving. What is she like immediately? Or is she like hauling ass? Or because you've run with her so much, she understands I'm going to be next to Evan and we're going to just run together. And, when I need to stop, I'll stop. Like, what is that like initially?
yeah, so the gear that I use for her is technically used for like canicross racing. So it's for canicross racers are typically you can do like 1K sprints with your dog or 5Ks or 10Ks, where people might see it as like skijoring, same thing. You have this longer leash and this longer harness that kind of comes off of their back. So they have, 6 feet, 8 feet out in front of you, which allows her to not feel like I'm crowding her. And really, the idea is like they're supposed to be like pulling pretty hard, but Nova's never been a really big puller. But because we trained, she normally was off leash training with me whenever we were in spots that were like off leash friendly. But for the last year, since I decided to do this race, she has been on harness, on leash for every single run. So she just knew as soon as we were in it, like she led easily for 90% of the race. She was in front of me. The only time she went behind or beside is when she didn't want to be poked by one of my poles. And she knows. That's the crazy thing. She absolutely knows as soon as those poles comes out, she's like, I just need to avoid those things.
So how do you manage nutrition, hydration for the dog, right? And how do you manage it for yourself, Simon? Because I can't imagine you're like in symbiosis, right? I'm thirsty and hungry, so she must be too, or
Yeah.
she's thirsty, hungry, so I must be too. Like, how do you manage that part of it all?
Yeah, you alluded to nobody else ever having done this, and I mean, maybe somebody in the audience or somebody that listens to this might know of somebody that put a dog in a competitive race like this, but I couldn't find anything. The only one was Finding Gobi with the dog that kind of followed somebody for a 3-day stage race. His name was Dion Leonard. There's a book out and everything about it, and he adopted the dog, and now he travels with him and does all these shows and everything with him, which is awesome. But no dog that I know of that has been in a competitive race, so I didn't know what to really do past a certain distance because we've only gone so far before, and I'm pretty much doubling her distance if we go the full 100 miles that she's ever done. So we consulted a friend's dad who owns Sunrise Sled Dog and spoke with him because that was the only comparison I could really come up with was sled dogs. We had a good conversation, and with sled dogs, they need equal amount of rest, equal amount of work because they're working for extended periods of time, like nonstop. Whereas with ultra and trail, we know like we'd like to we like to call it power hiking, but let's just call it uphill walking.
Yeah.
Um, like we walk quite a bit and we take our time. So I knew her effort level was going to be much lower than what a sled dog would have. So we just decided we were going to have adequate rest throughout. And now Orcas Island 100 is 4 25-mile loops with 3 aid stations in between, and then you go back to the start. So you do have some stops along the way. So we knew we were going to have rest at that main aid station. We were going to take some breaks in between, feed her, but we split her food up rather than giving her her full dinner meal, which is like 8 ounces. We split it up into 2 ounce portions that we just kind of slowly fed her between all the aid stations that we could access with the crew. And then for hydration, there was enough puddles around. She kept herself. She's always been good about drinking when she needs to drink, so I didn't need to worry too much about it. I had a bottle just in case. And then that was really what it is. And I forgot about myself. I'll be honest. Like I was so focused on, and that's what the cool thing about this race was. It was never about me.
Yeah.
This was for like the reason I chose this race from the beginning. It was about her. And I'm like, let's see what she's capable of because she has probably no idea herself. And it's not lost on me that a lot of people might think that I was pushing her beyond what she was capable of doing. But we went into this so holistically and so on point, making sure that we had a structured schedule that we weren't going to deviate from. And we stuck to it.
Was when you saw her drinking out of the puddles, was that like a Pavlov's dog for you? Oh, I better keep hydrating myself.
I mean, I would like to say yes. I mean, hydration has always been, I've been really good at hydration with electrolytes. It's the eating part that I sometimes don't do enough of. Um, and then I forget about myself because I'm so focused on her. Because people might think that I might have had an advantage because she's pulling me up the hills or whatever you might think. To be honest, it's a disadvantage because now not only do I have to think for myself, I have to think for this like animal that's attached to me at the hip
I
going up a hill with poles and like the leash gets caught and she doesn't want to go forward. She sniffs something in the trees and like she's pretty focused most of the time, but there's moments that she sees a squirrel or like, and then when I say squirrel, like she darts off in one direction and kind of pulls me. And so it's your brain is constantly on the entire time because you, even more so than when you're just by yourself.
I'd never thought of this idea that you have an advantage
And
because the dog is pulling up there. Was that something that was mentioned to you, or is that something that you just thought of yourself?
there was a couple people that asked me if I like if we were doing really well in the race and let's say we were just like crushing it and I ended up podiuming, would that be considered like okay because I had like an assist with me? Never got to that. It was never about that. But it was just somebody was asking me, you're like, oh, so if you win, like, do you actually win or do you get like some other sort of form of like winning? I'm like, it didn't even cross my mind because I'm like, I knew we weren't going to win because I had to manage her effort levels in order to see how far we could go.
Right. So how far did you get? Let's unveil the truth here.
Yeah, yeah. So we finished 75 miles of the 100.
So 3 loops,
Three
correct?
loops. Yeah, 3 loops. The first loop was 6 hours. We absolutely crushed the first loop.
Yeah.
Second loop, I had a really tough time because obviously that type of weather, Orcas Island, for those who don't know where it is, it's in Washington State off of the coast. So it's like very kind of Pacific Northwest kind of weather. And we ended up with like misty rain and fog from the time it went dark till the morning. And it took us 10 hours almost, or I think maybe even a little bit more to do the second loop because I couldn't see 6 feet in front of me.
I was gonna ask, was it more the visual?
It was like a car driving down
Yeah.
in fog with its brights on
Right. Yeah, you can't see
because
anything.
my headlamp was up here, just like causing this distortion. And then every time I had to walk, my breath would fog me out as well. So it was either like fog on top of my breath. So I figured out that if we even just did like a slow jog, my breath would at least go behind me, even if I was nose breathing. But it was very disorienting for me. And I was just trying to make sure that she was safe because dogs don't have as great a vision as us. So she's trusting me full out of where are we on this trail, because she has no idea and she's just following along with me.
Yep.
So that loop took us longer, and then we weren't going to make cutoff because we did take our rest breaks that we needed, and we were looking at the cutoff, and I would have had to have done that third loop in just over the same amount of time I did the first loop in. And by the time we got to the kind of the last climb towards the last aid station, I just kind of looked at my watch. I'm like, there's no way we're going to get down in time. So we made it up to the top, and then we just made the decision to just hike down. There's no point in running down to put any more stress on her. And yeah, we finished 3 loops, 75 miles. Do I think we could have gone the full distance with her? I absolutely do. Um, but I think it's kind of cool not knowing.
Yeah, there's that mystery that's out there. And honestly, like when a book ends with that question mark, that's a good book, right? Because now you have the imagination and you play it backwards in your mind for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go back to the registration though. So when
Mhm.
you decide to register for this event, are you reaching out to the RD and being like, "Hey, can I take my dog?" Like what's the reaction from
Yeah.
the RD?
Yeah, so there's not very many ultras that will allow dogs, just purely because of the numbers of registration, the safety aspect, insurance, those types of things. So I knew there was only going to be a select few races that I could probably even do this. So I did my research up front, looked at a ton of races, looked at the times of year, trying to figure out what would be the best conditions for her to run in for her paws, because that's obviously a huge consideration, is the care of her paws. If it's rocky, we're probably not going to be able to go as far as we would be able to at a place like Orcas. So February, kind of late winter, early spring for that area. Temperatures were going to be anywhere from 0 to 10 degrees, maybe a little bit of rain, soft, squishy terrain the entire time. So I reached out to Rain Shadow
That's in
Running.
Celsius, right? 0 to 10 degrees Celsius.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Celsius, everybody, Celsius. I will say that. So what is that, like 40 Fahrenheit? Yeah, like 40 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
somewhere
think
in there. See,
I think it's
I'm
like
like,
48.
my conversion's getting better.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Katie Farrell, one of the race directors for Rain Shadow Running, and she immediately was like, "Absolutely, like we're totally in." Was very helpful throughout the thing, throughout registration. As soon as registration, like I was there, like the minute registration opened, I was like, "Bam!" I think that was like sometime in August last year when I registered her. So the race director, everybody was super supportive. The night of the when they were kind of giving everybody the brief the night before. They introduced me and just said what I was doing, and everybody in the crowd was just, everybody that was racing was just like, "What? Like, there's a dog doing the whole thing." So yeah, it was a very community feeling event, which I absolutely love these events.
That's awesome.
Everybody was super supportive. She had a cheer station at every aid station. They didn't care about me. They would see her come over
No,
the timing mat, and they would be like, "Oh, Nova, you're doing," and I'm just like being dragged behind,
you
just
are 100% the supporting actor in this movie, dude.
absolutely. And that's how I wanted it. I wanted to be the pacer. That's the way that I viewed this.
So basically saying that, you're ending the story with a question mark leads me to believe that there is no part 2 to this. Like you've done the thing and there is no part 2. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, there's no immediate plans to try to run another 100 miler with her in any way, shape, or form. She's 7 years old. She turns 8 in July. So, I mean, do I think she's in her prime right now? Absolutely. But the problem with Vizslas are, as soon as you show them how far they can go, they want more.
Mhm.
And that's I think that's the risk that I'm running right now. And we've done quite a few long runs the last few weeks. Like I ran a 32K and I ran a just over 40K with her, even in the last couple weeks. So there's no ill effects from her after the race. But yeah, there's no immediate plans to go that distance again. But I would say there is definitely a likelihood that she will be doing another ultra, not that distance though.
Recovery is so important for us when we finish these, whether it's 75 miles or 100 or 50 miles, whatever it is. Did you notice anything in her demeanor after the race was over? Like, was she napping more? Was she eating more? Was she drinking more?
Absolutely, a cinnamon bun in front of the fireplace at the Airbnb. As soon as we got back, just curled up. She got up, she ate, obviously, just like us as runners, a little bit stiff getting up and things like that. Gave her some massages and just kind of let her rest. And within, like, we drove, that would have been, we finished the race Saturday, or timed out on Saturday afternoon. and by Monday she was already running around the house again.
Gotcha.
So her recovery was like better than mine, I will say, which is
You need to
cool to
sit your
see.
butt in front of the fireplace yourself then.
Yeah, honestly, and that's why I say I think she was capable of that distance, if we would have been able to keep going, for sure.
So I mentioned you were the supporting actor in this movie, which is a perfect segue to a movie. So I know there was a camera crew up there. Give us some details about what's going to be happening here with the film, with the footage that was being taken during the event.
Yeah, so I had two people out there helping us kind of create a little bit of a story behind this, because again, it's not lost on me how unique this opportunity was, and I was only going to get one shot to do this, and being able to have people be able to see it through the dog's eyes and see themselves in it, see their pet in it, see. I think this is going to transcend just running in general. Like running just happened to be the thing that we were doing, but it's that relationship between like man and dog.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the story is going to be more about. Less, yes, the running happened, and yes, it's cool, and yes, it's awesome, but it's going to be more about that connection between her and I, and my wife Cassie, who was crewing us the whole time too, and with like every race that I do. So just having that connection and that bond, and seeing like how far can you take that bond, and like how much does it mean in those moments, like again in the fog, like running with me, like there's a lot of trust involved in that. So yeah, Lucas, Colin, and Tommy DeWitt were the film team, and I have no doubt in my mind that they are, from the conversations that we've had, that we have so much amazing footage that it's going to be hard to like axe things. It's going to be that good. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it, and we can't wait to release it, which will be May 15th is when we're going to release it globally on YouTube, and some more stuff coming kind of before that, just to tease the video out a little bit and the documentary out a little bit.
Were you or Nova or both wearing GoPros as well, or was the footage all from the two guys following you?
I will say that I had a GoPro. Nova was not wearing one. We couldn't figure out a way to attach it to her properly to make it stable enough to
Yeah.
for what we needed it for that distance. But yeah, I definitely have some like behind the scenes in the mist footage that will likely be a part of that in some way.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I would hopefully it's in the movie, but if not, maybe there's some behind the scenes that you'll share with us to see that description that you gave us, which is a car with its high beams on in the fog where you can't see anything. Because we've all been there at some point, but it would be interesting to see it from foot as opposed to being in an automobile. It'd be really neat to see that.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't take the GoPro out too much in the really thick stuff at nighttime. Just like my hands were so cold. But yeah, there's definitely going to be, you're going to get the mood and the feeling with what was going on. There's no doubt.
So I want to segue from the finish at Orcas, and you said you and Nova have been running again because you're preparing yourself for Tahoe 200, which is in mid-July, the 13th through the 18th. We met for the first time in person at Tahoe 200 last year, which was a great honor for me to be able to connect with you in person and shake hands and chat. And we had, lengthy conversations about terrain and pacing and all these other things. Did you know, because I can't recall, did you know that you were going to be doing that event this year when we were chatting?
Yeah, so the reason why I was even in Tahoe last year is between Speed Project and the backyard ultra that I ran within a month of one another, I couldn't recover fast enough from an injury that I sustained during Speed Project, where I tore the fascia in the back of my leg. And I didn't want to forfeit my entry into Tahoe, so I agreed to go down and volunteer for 5 days, and kind of help out in the main aid station area at the headquarters. I swept night 3, which was absolutely mind-boggling. If you want to see people at their absolute worst, go and sweep a 200 on night 3 and night 4. Like, I can assure you of that.
I don't know if I'm sure we've shared this story with you, but I remember when we were coming into that heavenly loop at the end of Ohm's event, and you get to the point where you can see the finish line through the trees, and there's an arrow that points up. And I remember getting there, and it was freezing cold. Ohm had been laying in the grass, dirt for like 2 minutes, and my hands were like brittle, ready to break off. And when this arrow is there, and I don't know if you remember that arrow, but it looks like it's pointing straight up the mountain. And I looked at Ohm and I'm like, I'm not fucking going up there. You're on your own, buddy. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And we take like 5 steps, and the arrow is literally to tell you that the trail, which turns left, right, is right after that. But I can, if you were sweeping, were you sweeping up to that point at that event? At the
Yeah, so I swept from I guess it would be Tahoe City to Brockway,
Okay.
and then I had a break, and then I swept from Incline Village to I'm trying to remember what the one right before the last section. And I was able to get all the runners that I had with me, the ragtag bunch of people that were almost left in the dust. Managed to get everybody to that aid station before final cutoff. Only one chose not to continue, who just wasn't in medical condition to continue. But everybody else who we got to that spot was able to finish the race, which was, as somebody who's sweeping the course, and that was the first time I'd ever done that in any of my ultras or anything. And I have like a new appreciation for like how cool that is to help somebody else finish a race who didn't think they were even going to get there, but with your motivation and your help, really, because your job is to like shoo them along enough and give them just enough time to like hit the cutoff to be able to continue, right?
Yeah.
So to get them there and see them at the finish line afterwards, it was pretty cool, even though they may not remember you because of how sleep deprived they were. But
It's just as you're telling this story, I'm reflecting back on the conversation we just had with Nova, and this wasn't about you. And I was like, you were her pacer, right? And that's essentially what you were doing for 75 miles, was you were acting as her pacer, and now you're acting as a pacer for these people, even though the term is sweeper. What's it like to give up of yourself for others' achievements, including, your dog? Like, what does that give to you? What does that bring to you?
Ooh,
Should I say that for Enduring Minds?
Yeah, that's a deep one. Only because I don't think I really knew what. I mean, you never really know what you're giving up when you go until you are in the experience, and you realize that it's like you're actually not giving anything up. You're actually like getting a lot in return, and I think that's the beauty of it. Is like I don't feel like I gave anything up. I feel like I actually like grew and realized that, I always say that it's like it's more than just a run. There's always something more to it, and to be a part of somebody else's story now. Again, some of the story that I'll tell you in the future, I'll tell you a few hallucination stories from some of the sweeping at Tahoe, because it was just, and you tell these stories, and now you're a part of those people's stories, and you've told them what those stories were, because they had no idea. And then I told them afterwards what happened, and they're just like, "What? I can't believe I did that." So you become part of their story, which I think is a really cool part of the ultra community. And I didn't get it. I hadn't got a chance to experience it up until Tahoe last year, which is, I mean, a big event. So being able to experience that alongside people, I think my heart grew just bigger, just being a part of somebody else's story.
Yeah, I've always found it to be an honor when somebody asks me to pace and crew them at an event, because they're literally handing their event over to you to say, I need you to help me through this, which is for some people really hard to do, right? Asking for help. It's something that we talk about on the Enduring Minds podcast. Is asking for help isn't very easy for a lot of us. And so when somebody says, hey, can you help me through X event or Y event? I've always felt it was an honor. And I need to do everything I can to give that person a chance to be successful at their event, regardless of how I feel, right? You talked about being cold at Tahoe. And I know for a fact I had paced Allison Miller at Bandera, and which is 100K in Texas. And we come out of this one section, and it's freezing and the winds are whipping, and she forgot her gloves, and I have gloves in my hand, and she knows that. And she's like, hey, do you still have those gloves on? And for a brief moment, I was like, I could lie. Be like, no, I left them at the aid station. but this is not my event. Hand him over to her, let her be warm and do her thing. And I think that's a big honor for people to ask. So kudos to you for getting those people through their event and forward. Do you have crew and pacers for Tahoe 200, or are you doing this as a solo adventure?
No, so I right now obviously I have my wife Cassie
Mhm.
who and when just briefly when you talk about pacers and like they're there for the runner. I always joke. I love that my wife says this to all the pacers and anybody who crews me or helps me in any way. She goes, "When you're on the trail and you're pacing Evan, your problems don't matter." And not because it's like she's harsh, but it's like you're out there for him. And she's like, "When you come back, you can complain and
Mhm.
cry and whine all you want about how cold you were to me." But she's like, "I don't want him to hear any of that." And I was like, I appreciate that because it's like it's true. You're there for the runner. But yeah, Cassie will be there for sure for Tahoe. And then I do have a few contacts that I've been reaching out to down in that area that have expressed interest in helping to pace. I'm prepared to do it solo this time. That will be the first 200 that I'm like, you know what, I'm willing to do this by myself if that's what I need to do. The few people that I have reached out to have said that they might be available. So I'm pretty stoked if I can get even just like 2 or 3 pacers for that little bit of the last back half would be amazing.
I mean, it's a hell of an experience. I mean, you saw it, as the sweeper, and I got to experience 50 miles of it. And I mean, it's beautiful out there. And I wonder sometimes if doing a 200 solo where you can take everything in on your own without outside voices. This is not a punch in the face to pacers and crew because I use them too. But there are moments where you want to be solo and absorb it all. And in that place, that could be the one race where you're like, I can take it all in. And just because you're above the lake out
Mhm.
there and just being able to take it all in would probably be uber memorable.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. Like I have the tools to do it both ways, and I know that now. In the past, I probably wouldn't have been able to say, "I'm gonna go out and do a 200 by myself." I would have been like, "I'm afraid to do a 200 by myself. I want pacers. I need pacers." Whereas now I'm coming at it from a just like you said, like this could be like a not transcendent, but this could just be like a very like internal like monk moment where I get the opportunity to just like go out and do something that I wanted to do this race last year. This will be my first big US 200 that I've done, and I want to be competitive, and I know I can be. And it's funny. I was watching I don't know if you watched any of the David Roche video where he was training for Big Alta, and he said that in order to go to the places he's never been, I'm probably butchering the quote here, but in order to go to the places you've never been, you have to be willing to do things that you've never done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what training is for me over the next long while. I'll be doing a lot of different training that I've ever done, some double days, extra mileage, like going above what I would normally do because I need to do something different if I want a different outcome. And I do think I can be competitive at this race. So this one's for me.
Why do you think it's volume and not cross training? That it would be something different that you've never done before. So, I don't presume to know any of your training, but
Mhm.
if you've never ridden a bicycle in training before, why not incorporate that versus more volume? What do you think the thought process is?
Yeah, I think it's more of a mindset of the added kilometers on my legs over a period of time of understanding that it's like you can sustain that and proving to myself that I'm capable of handling a little bit more mileage as well as understanding like because that's what Tahoe is going to take. Tahoe is going to take a lot of time on feet and not necessarily being the fastest, but the person who slows down the least.
Thank you. Louder for the people in the back. It's not always about being the fastest person. It's about being the person who slows down the least. It's a conversation I have often with people when they're like, why should I strength train? I'm like, because it will allow you to slow down the least over time. If you and I go out and you run a 9-minute mile and I run an 11-minute mile, but you degrade to 15 and I degrade to 13, I'm going to beat you
Mhm.
over the
Yep,
long haul. I
that's
mean,
it. And it's a matter of I have a bad habit of staying in aid stations for too long, which I'm going to kick severely in the ass this time because I'm going to allow myself the time I need,
mhm.
but there will be no extra time. Like the goal is to push. And if that push means that I end up blowing up in the end because I just wasn't prepared or I had a bad day or nutrition or something, then that's okay. And I'm okay with that. But I need to push myself further than I ever have to get something that like get myself the result that I am looking for out of this time. It's very rare that I go into these races now looking for an outcome, but I want to challenge myself this time and go, just leave it all out there. There's nothing that you can do other than leave it all out there this time.
There's so many ways to reach a finish line. And for me, when I race, it's always been all gas, no brakes. Like sometimes that gets you to the finish line, and other times you get to mile 30 and you're done, right? It happens. It is what it is. Why is it that this time that's the mentality? Is it because you know you can be competitive, or you feel like you can be competitive? You've looked at the field, you studied the competitors. Like what was the thing that got you to flip that switch for this particular event?
Yeah, it was the time that I had last year sweeping the course and being able to have a little bit of intel for myself, I think was a huge benefit. And that's why I decided to go last year because it was just like it was the opportunity to be on the trails and understand that terrain very well. And I think I even mentioned it when we did my episode on Enduring Minds for the first episode was I've had this fear of success for a very long time of am I good enough? Am I capable enough to like put myself into that position of blowing up because I've always been a conservative racer. I've always left something in the tank. And my 200 miler last year when I finished, I did the last like 25 kilometers, so I like almost just shy of 13 over 13 miles, 15 miles, something like that, somewhere in there, in like 3.5 hours, just at the end of a 200. And I'm like, okay, if I can do that, like what was I leaving on the table? And for me, it's a matter of just breaking through that ceiling for myself of going like, you don't need to fear the success because you've never put yourself in that place before to challenge that narrative for myself. And again, the healing and the mental health recovery and all these other pieces, I think are putting me in that position to just go like, you know what, like throw caution to the wind and just like don't let that fear, and in my case, that fear of success, like destroy an opportunity for you again, of showing yourself what you're capable of.
I think when we accept that failure is an outcome that may happen,
Hmm.
is when we get rid of that and we stop to fear success. Because it's like, okay, yeah, I might not make it, and that's okay. Like once you accept failure as an outcome, I think the whole mindset can actually shift to proving to yourself that I can be successful. And it doesn't matter what it is, growing a business, getting your podcast off the ground, running a 200-mile race. I think they're all one and the same. Um, what are you doing differently in training today or than you thought you might have a year ago when you had registered for this race? Are you doing more uphills? Are you running harder downhills? Like how has your training changed now that you've been to the course, you've seen it, and you have a year to plan for it?
Yeah, so long run days are progressively getting longer. Still maintaining 2 rest days a week, so I'm still trying to only run 5 days a week at the absolute most, and then double days. That's really the because I want to teach myself that I am capable of running on tired legs, even when I get tired during a 200 and think I have to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to give myself that body of evidence that shows me that no, like you've done it in training, strides, intervals. Like I'm adding a little bit of speed work, but even speaking with my coach, like Tahoe is going to be about, again, not slowing down and just maintaining a constant, like you said, all gas, like just maintaining that constant forward progress of like, we're just going to do this, whether I sleep or not. I'm not sure yet. But in the back of my mind, I'm going right now, like, I'm not creating a sleep schedule this time because that I feel like that gives me an out to like slow down again and be like, oh, I get to rest. Like, I want to just go, no sleep plan, which is very odd for me as well. Like, again, I've been very conservative in planning out my sleep for my 200s and longer distances. So this one is just like go in, and if I have to rest for a brief period, then I will if I absolutely have to. But other than that, like I may not sleep. I don't know. We'll see. But that's the plan, is just not having a plan, I guess is the best way to say it, other than just like forward progress constantly.
Yeah, I had on my road ID, my motto is relentless forward motion. That's it. Just relentless forward. If you can keep going forward, and I'm a big believer in mantras. Another one I have is run when you can, walk if you must, but always bomb the downhill. And it's just one of those things that kind of reminds me, like if this is flat, you can shuffle and run, right? Which is going to be faster than your walk. And then when you hit that uphill section, okay, this is where you must walk, and that's cool. But keep moving forward because it'll get you to the finish line faster. I mean, that's like, again, math is very simple in this scenario. If it takes
Yeah.
me 15 minutes to get to point A, but because I'm walking, and it takes me 13 minutes to get to point A because I'm shuffling is the right way to go, right?
Yeah. Perfect example on the weekend. I don't know if you saw one of my stories that I posted. I went on a long run on just pathways, thought I was going to only do half marathon. I ended up pushing a little bit further. I'm like, oh, that bridge doesn't seem too far away. I can just cross over. And at the 16K mark, I was like, oh, I'm hungry. And I went and I forgot my nutrition at home. So all I had was my electrolytes on me and I bonked hard. And I called my wife and I said, hey, I need food. I'm not feeling great. Can you come pick me up? And as we've discussed in the past, she said, no. And her response was, you've been in more pain before. I'll talk to you when you get home. And she hung up the phone. And I was like, you know what? I love you. I was like, that is what we've planned. That is what I expect. And she just like, without hesitation, was just like, no, I'm not picking you up. And those are those pieces that I need to recall because as I was getting closer to home, I had 1 kilometer left. And I was like, how much can I push it? And I
Yeah.
ran my fastest kilometer of the day. So like those are those little pieces and those bodies of evidence that I'm like actively writing down now that I can be like, okay, in those moments when you thought you were done or you thought you were bonking or you thought you were going to be able to finish, like walk, crawl, run, whatever it takes, like you've come through it before. Like this is not that, and just like push through. So it's like that is that body of evidence that I'm going to pull from in those moments for Tahoe.
I love it. So this is in mid-July, so we're talking about halfway through the year. Do you have anything on the schedule or thoughts of anything after the 200? Which is a crazy question to ask, right? Like, why are we doing more? But I know that you're a person who also plots things out
Yeah.
methodically. You don't do things haphazardly in these ways. So I'm wondering, like, when you built the schedule for 2025, Orcas 100, Tahoe 200, and then let's rest, or what?
So I had Orcas and Tahoe were the only two primary ones that I had on my list because Tahoe is my A race. Tahoe is my goal this year. Everything was going towards that. I decided not to run in a backyard ultra that's at the end of April because I wanted to be 100% prepared for this. But there is a couple that I'm looking at doing. Canadian Death Race, which I've done a couple times before. Still been my Achilles heel, trying to break 20 hours. And it's a Western States qualifier, so that's beginning of August. I might be looking at that. And then I did get into a race in October. I've raced it before. Some people may not know what the race is. It's kind of on the lower profile. It's been around for over 10 years, but it's called the Canyon de Chelly Ultra, and it's just in Chinle, Arizona. And it's through a Navajo Canyon, through the National Park Monument there. And the only time you can typically go in there is with a guide. So they allow 150 runners once a year through a lottery system. And I'm 2 for 2 on the lottery. I don't know if I got like horseshoes or if I'm meant to run this race again because I absolutely destroyed myself last time and I had to drag my leg through the sand to finish the race. So I think it's just like I think they're just telling me, the universe is telling me I get an opportunity to run it the right way this time. And that was in 2019. So
Oh, wow.
that was like my second year into like longer distance ultras. So, and this is a 56-kilometer race. So I'm really excited about that one. Last time I ended up running with like wild horses for like 4 kilometers, like literally like 20 feet from me, just in a massive pack. So I'm pretty excited about that one. And then as we discussed, nobody else knows, but there's something potentially big at the end of December, early January. I'll just leave it at that. I'll let people stew on that one, maybe think about what I could be doing then, but not 100% sure on it yet. I need to see how Tahoe goes and then talk to my coach and see what we can come up with. But that one is scary and exciting, and that might be my 2026 one because it would be into January as well. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, hey, you've got a heck of a calendar, and I appreciate you teasing it out um, for our audience here, dude. I just absolutely love talking to you from the first time we met and chatted through mostly Instagram messages to meeting you in person in Tahoe, and now having the honor and the privilege to host Enduring Minds, where you bring a lot of creativity to the table, which allows me to get creative with the show. I can't thank you enough for being a part of the Run Try Bike community and for being a part of my life as a friend and as somebody who I look up to with the way you have followed your path and your journey in life. It gives me an example to follow as well. So thank you so much for that. Where can people find you? Obviously on the screen, if you're listening to this on the podcast, it's at Ultra Birch on Instagram. But where else can people find you out in the wild?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Jason. Like, right back at you, man. Like, again, every conversation we've had, it's always been met with a like, let's see how high we can jump and let's see how far we can go. And I think that having that energy around you and that mentality around you just pushes you to want to do more and be better for yourself and be better for others. Which, I mean, through our Enduring Minds podcast, I feel like that's what we're doing is we're showing other people that like we're creating safe spaces, we're having the tough conversations. So I'm excited to keep going with that. And I really appreciate just you having the platform and sharing that with me and us being able to share it with the audience. So thank you for that. And then as for where to find me, so yeah, Ultra Birch on Instagram, ultrabirch.com is my email, or sorry, my website. And then my YouTube channel is Running Forward, is what the YouTube channel name is. Everything's, you'll be able to connect through the link in bio, but that's kind of the three primary areas. And then maybe a little bit on LinkedIn now, but not as much as I probably want to, but we'll see.
So we normally have food questions to round up the show, but we've already done that on the original Fireside Chat. So we're going to go to music, and we can tap this into our What's in Your Earbuds podcast. We are up to 21 hours on our What's in Your Earbuds Everyday Athlete Podcast Network playlist. Our goal was to get to 24 hours. So people who run 100 milers, if they get there in 24 hours, they have a full playlist they can listen to without repeat songs. And now we're pushing for the golden hour up to 30 hours. So let's tap into this. If they made a movie about your life, what is the opening scene going to be, and what's the music that's going to be playing in the background?
Opening scene. Well, I can tell you the music because it's a song that honestly, there's very few times I listen to music when I'm running, especially in longer distances. But there's one song that I'm like, that person will put one song on repeat and just run it for I don't know how many hours. Like we're talking multiple hours. So the song Eminem Higher. I don't know if you've heard it. I don't know if you recognize it. But there's one line in it that goes, every time I think I've hit my ceiling. Oh man, why am I drawing a blank now? Now I'm nervous because I love the song.
We'll add it to the playlist, yeah. and then we'll send it to you so you can listen to it.
Yeah, I clearly listened to it way too much that it's like burned out of my skull now. It's basically anytime think you hit your ceiling, you go further than you've ever been, with a couple expletives in there. But that's what it is for me too. Like within my own mental health, my running, my racing, like every time I think like I've hit that like precipice of like I don't think I can go any further, or I don't think I can, go to another therapy session. Like I just like go further than I've been. And I think that's why that song just like means so much to me in that way. It's maybe not how it was written for it, but I mean, just like any music, like we take from it what we want, not necessarily lyric for lyric. Right. But the scene would be, I mean, I would be standing there with Nova. There would be no doubt about it. Like it would just be like, or it'd be like me picking her up from Montana when she was a puppy in the front seat of the car. That's what it would be.
There you go. All right. So I don't know if you know this, but because you mentioned running to that song for hours on end, I ran a 1 mile loop for 4 hours with the single song Dance Monkey in my ears. That was the challenge. I made it to 4 hours out of 6.
My kids
Um,
love that song.
well, I love it too because I listened to it for 4 straight hours. Could you think of a song that you could run for 4 hours? Not a song that you loved because that's easy. That would be easier to do. But a song that kind of grates on your nerves a little bit, and you're like, could I run for 4 hours in a 1 mile loop to that song? What would that song be?
Do you remember Hamster Dance?
No.
Oh, okay. You're gonna have to look it up after on YouTube, just or even look it up now. Whatever you want. Like you, I mean, we'll probably get banned off Instagram if you try to play Hamster Dance on there. But look up Hamster Dance on YouTube. We're gonna look at it after, and then you can put it in the show notes for everybody and tell them what it's actually, and put the link in there. I think
We will
that's
absolutely
everybody
do
should
that.
look. Put Hamster Dance into your. Yeah, I don't know if I
All right.
could do it. We'll see.
I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but I am a huge baseball fan. Opening day is 2 days away. And every time a player comes up to bat, they play walk up music. So we're at the Tahoe 200, and everybody gets to play their walk up song as they get to the start line. What's your song going to be?
Hmm. I mean, I grew up in the era for Eminem, so I mean, I hate to use it again, but it's going to be "Lose Myself" by Eminem.
That's a good one, dude. Like
That's,
that
I
would get you
mean,
pumped.
I don't know what it is with the music. Maybe it's my Northeast roots coming through, growing up in kind of not the rougher part of town, but just like a little bit more rugged part of the city, but in Calgary here. But yeah, I think that's what it is for me. It's music that kind of spoke to me as a kid, and it still does. So
Yeah, for me, it would be Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z and Alicia Keys. Just give me that New York sound. Give me all the references to New York City as I'm walking up to the start line. So now we're finishing. What's the song that's playing as you come across the under the finisher's arch?
I don't want to give like an easy one away here. Hmm. Man, music is one of those things that it's funny. If my wife was sitting here, she would have been spurting out songs, just like filling your ears. And I'm sitting here going like, I love music, but it's like, be damned if I can remember the band or who sung. Like, don't bring me to name that tune. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, I would be the worst at that, dude.
No, my wife is a superhero with that. So yeah, bring her, but not me. Um, the song coming across the finish line. Um,
For me, it would be Narcos by Timmy Trumpets. And this goes back to baseball. So when the Mets closer comes into the game, they play it at Citi Field, and it is a thumper, dude. Like, if you feel like you're dragging ass and that song comes on, there's no doubt you're finishing under that arch as if you just started the race. So I would encourage everybody to go listen to it. It's called Narcos by Timmy Trumpets. It is a thumper. It will get your blood boiling and ready to go.
All right, I'm gonna abstain from giving you an answer because I don't have one, but I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna pick something for Tahoe.
I love it. Dude, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Fireside Chat. It was great to have you, and we'll be following your journey between today and July 13th when you get to the start line for Tahoe 200. Thanks, Evan.